I was sitting in my favorite restaurant having lunch with my girlfriends when I saw my boyfriend Adam coming over to me.
"Hi, babe,"
he said. "Oh yeah, hi," I replied. "Listen, I don't think you should call me babe anymore."
"Why not?"
"Because we're over."
"What do you mean?"
"You know, you're dumped," I went on. "You've served your purpose, but I'm bored with you now." Adam walked away from our table. He looked heartbroken. I rolled my eyes at my friends. "What a loser," I said, laughing. They all burst out laughing too. Before I go on, make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell, or you might end up with a boyfriend who is a loser too. Adam was just one of a long stream of boyfriends. I got bored very quickly, so as soon as they started to become annoying, I would just dump them and move on to the next one. I always got every boy I had my eye on. Why wouldn't I? I was rich, beautiful, and popular. Nobody ever said no to me. That was until I met Mark. I remember the first time I saw him. He was new at our school. "Who is that?" I asked my friend Mia. "That's the new boy Mark," she said. "Well, he's going to be my next boyfriend." She just laughed. She knew that I always got what I wanted. I went over to where Mark was sitting. "Hi, I'm Felicity," I said to him. Mark smiled at me. "Oh, this is going to be so easy," I thought to myself. But it didn't matter how much I flirted with him. I showed him photos of my cliff-top mansion overlooking the ocean. I even offered to buy him the latest Nike trainers that were super expensive. But he didn't want to go out with me. I had never been turned down before. I couldn't understand why he didn't want to go out with me. But then one day, I found out the reason why. I saw Mark talking to my arch enemy, Rachel. She had never liked me, ever since the day my friends and I teased her about her style of dressing. We were only having a bit of fun, but she took it to heart. "Felicity, you are a spoilt, mean girl," she said. Well, there was no need for that, was there? It was so obvious that she must have said some nasty things about me to Mark. That was why he didn't want to date me. I decided there and then that I was going to show her she couldn't interfere in my life and get away with it. I would get Mark one way or another. It was quite easy organizing my plan. I just needed money, and I had plenty of that. I searched on the internet and found what I was looking for, a hypnotist. I arranged to meet him the following day. At first, he wasn't keen to see me, but when I showed him how much money I was willing to pay, he soon agreed. I told him to put an advert in our local newspaper for a hypnotism show. I hired the room and paid for a big audience to be there. Everyone was in on my plan. Now all I needed to do was make sure Mark went to it. I knew that if I invited Mark, he would never go. I would need to get someone else to ask him. I couldn't ask any of my friends to help me. I knew that they wouldn't do it. Then it came to me. One of the boys at the school was always sitting on his own. I had never taken much notice to him before. He wasn't important to me. At lunchtime, I went and found him. "Do you want to earn some money?" I asked him. "What do I have to do?" he asked. "Just make sure that Mark goes to see the hypnotism show." I'm not sure how he managed it, but the next time I saw him, he nodded to me. "He's agreed to go." "Good," I said as I paid him his money. The night of the show came. I was so excited. I finally was going to get what I wanted. The show began and the hypnotist asked for some volunteers. Nobody put their hands up. Why would they? I had paid everyone in the audience to not volunteer. The hypnotist looked at Mark. "How about you?" he asked. "Will you come up and be hypnotized?" Mark seemed reluctant at first, but everyone around him started egging him on. "Go on," they cried. "It's only for a laugh." Mark went up onto the stage. It didn't take long for the hypnotist to put Mark into a trance. While he was under, he told Mark that when he woke up, he would see me and find me irresistible. He would do anything for me. He would worship the ground I walked on. Mark woke up from the trance and looked around him. The hypnotist thanked him, and Mark took his seat in the audience again. Then, to make the show seem authentic, the hypnotist called a few more people out of the audience and carried on. When the show was over, I made sure I was waiting by the exit as Mark was leaving. "Oh, hi, Felicity," Mark said. "You look absolutely gorgeous." "Thank you, Mark," I replied. "Would you like to go out on a date with me?" "Of course." Ha, so it worked, I thought. I was so happy I'd finally got what I wanted. That night, Mark and I went out for dinner. The hypnotist had done a good job. Mark was hanging on my every word. I could do no wrong. "I can't believe I waited so long to ask you out," Mark said. "Well, you've got me now." Mark and I started dating. I couldn't wait to see the look on Rachel's face when she found out. The next day, Mark and I walked to school together. As we went through the school gates, I could see Rachel standing on the other side of the playground. I knew she was waiting for Mark. You should have seen her face drop when she saw us holding hands. "What are you doing with her?" she asked Mark. Mark just looked at me adoringly. "Felicity is my girlfriend now." She looked shocked. "But you don't even like her," she said. "You know she's just a spoiled, mean rich girl." But Mark wasn't going to let her talk about me like that. He soon told her what to do. "You're the mean girl, Rachel. Leave Felicity alone," he said. "I don't want to be friends with you anymore." Rachel looked so confused and hurt. I just smiled at her. "You heard what Mark said," I said. "You make sure you keep away from him, okay?" Mark and I walked away. I was so happy that I finally got what I wanted. Mark was the perfect boyfriend. He did everything I asked him to. It was quite cute, actually, the way he ran after me like a little lost puppy. I knew that he would do anything for me. I didn't want him to hang around with his friends anymore. I knew that they didn't like me. "Mark, please don't go out with your friends anymore," I asked him. "I want you to spend all your time with me." Mark didn't spend any more time with his friends after that. Most of them just accepted that he wanted to be with me all the time. But Rachel wouldn't let it go. She was the only one of his friends that kept on calling and texting him. I had to stop her from contacting him, so I threw his phone away and bought him a new one. So she wouldn't know his number, but somehow she found it out anyway. Every weekend, wherever we went, she would always be hanging around, trying to talk to Mark. It was so annoying. I just wanted to spend time alone with Mark, so I invited him to come and spend the weekend at my family's mansion. "It's an amazing place," I told him. "It's on a cliff top overlooking the ocean. We have a swimming pool and tennis courts. We'll have so much fun. Please say you'll come for the weekend." Mark agreed to come. I couldn't wait for the weekend to arrive. Eventually, Friday came and the bell to say it was the end of the day rang. Mark and I were just getting into my parents' car when Rachel came out of the school gates. "Where are you going, Mark?" she asked. Before I had time to tell Mark not to say anything, he had blurted it out. "To Felicity's mansion," he said. "Come on, Mark, we have to go," I told him. I was a bit annoyed that he had told Rachel. It was none of her business where we were going. "Why did you have to go and do that?" I asked Mark. Mark apologized. "I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking," he said. "I promise I'll make it up to you. Don't be annoyed with me, babe." I couldn't stay mad at him for long. I wanted our weekend to be perfect. I woke up Saturday morning and looked out of the window. The sun was shining and the sky was blue. It was going to be a brilliant day. Mark and I sat out on the garden eating our breakfast. "Let's go for a swim after breakfast," I said to him. "Whatever you want to do is fine with me," he said to me, smiling. We changed into our swimsuits and went out to the pool. We were just about to dive in when I heard our maid calling out to me. "Miss Felicity, your friend is here to see you," she shouted. I looked up to see who it was. I couldn't believe my eyes. There was Rachel walking through my garden towards us. I was so angry. She was going to spoil everything. "What do you want?" I asked her. "Oh, I just want us to be friends," she replied. I knew she was lying. She had never wanted to be friends with me. It was so obvious that she was just trying to be friends with Mark again. But I couldn't be mean to her in front of Mark. I didn't want him to take her side, so I decided to play along with it. "Sure," I said. "We can be friends. Come on, Mark. We can swim later. Why don't we all go for a walk along the cliff top? It's such a lovely view." We put on our clothes and the three of us set off on the path that ran along the cliff edge. Rachel was walking just in front of me and Mark. She couldn't hear us, so I took my chance. "Push her off the cliff," I said to Mark. "I can't do that," he said. "Yes, you can. You do love me, don't you?" I asked him. "Don't you want to make me happy?" "Of course I do," Mark replied. "Well, push her off then. Go on." I nudged Mark towards Rachel. As he moved towards her, she turned and looked at him. I knew that in only a few more seconds, I would get what I wanted. Finally, to be free from Rachel for good. Mark lifted up his hand, but instead of pushing her off the cliff, he took her phone out of her hand. "Did you get all that recorded?" he asked Rachel. "I sure did," she said, grinning. "What's going on?" I asked Mark. He took a microphone from out of his pocket. "I've been recording all the mean things you've said and done, and Rachel has got it all on her phone." "But why would you do that? You worship me," Mark laughed. "You don't think I actually worship you, do you?" Then he told me that he had never been hypnotized. He had known all along that I had paid the hypnotist to make him like me. Rachel had known too, and they had come up with a plan together. He had just pretended to be hypnotized until he could find a way to expose me, and now he had the evidence. I was so shocked, and a part of me was angry at the hypnotist because he must have been a fake. "Just give me the recording," I told Rachel. "I don't care how much money you want, I will pay it." "We don't want your money," Rachel said. "We just want everyone else to know what a mean, nasty person you are." "Get out of my house," I screamed. "I don't care what you do, I have loads of friends." But as it turned out, I didn't have as many friends as I had thought. Mark and Rachel put the recording out online, and it soon went viral. Everyone at school had heard it. Suddenly, no one was returning my calls. Even my best friend Mia gave me the cold shoulder at school. I hated going to school after that. No one spoke to me. I had to persuade my parents to let me move to a new school on the other side of town. Nobody knew me there, so I could have a fresh start. But I don't want you to feel sorry for me. Now I have a whole new bunch of guys to start dating.
I was sitting at my battered old computer doing homework when I felt my mom put her hands over my eyes and giggle from behind me. I could tell she was smiling when she told me to get up and to not sneak a peek. I started going through a mental calendar when I realized I forgot about my own birthday. If you like these stories, make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons below, as well as the notifications bell, so you're the first to know when a new story is out. My mom led me to the dining table, which she decorated with all sorts of birthday stuff, like cheesy balloons and napkins of all colors with the number 18 all over them. "Blow out the candles, Miles," smiled my mom. I blew out the 18 little candles and made my wish. I know it's stupid, but it's the one little superstition I allow myself. I wished to be so successful I could buy my mom and each of my siblings their own house and take care of them like my good-for-nothing dad never did. You're probably thinking this is the typical story of a poor kid with a heart of gold, the kind of guy who's loved by everyone but is really unlucky. Well, that's not me. It all started in high school. Instead of playing sports and going to parties all the time, I kept to myself. When I walked through the halls of my school, I didn't wave at anyone, didn't do some cheesy handshake with pals, and definitely didn't stuff anyone in a locker. I laughed to myself whenever I saw those things, because they all looked so pointless. During class, I sat at the back and didn't say a word. I didn't even pay attention most of the time, but I still had the best grades in the school because I worked hard on the side. All of that, of course, was ruined when she entered my life. My old history teacher had just retired, so I was expecting someone exactly like him to take his place. I could not have been more wrong. First came the sound of stilettos clacking on the floor. Then, a soft summer breeze wafted in her perfume. I still get the chills every time I hear heels clacking on the floor, and I gag when I smell similar perfume. She walked in slow motion. First came one leg, then the other followed suit. And soon enough, time stopped for every guy in my fourth period history class. She was every guy's dream woman. "My name is Mrs. Michaels. I'll be teaching you the history of the world from now on," she spoke while writing her name on the board and underlining it harshly. Every guy audibly gulped. I was distracted by Miss Michaels at first too, but it didn't last. A few minutes later, I was back to minding my business and scribbling absent-mindedly in a notebook, while the rest of the class opened the windows because the guys were sweating and the girls were fuming. "What are you, too good to pay attention in my class?" asked Miss Michaels. "No, miss," I said. She told me that if she caught me not paying attention again, she'd give me detention, but I knew she wouldn't do it. She had the vibe of someone who was all bark and no bite. My grades in history absolutely died. What kind of teacher grades on participation? Just to spite her, I started sitting at the very front of the class. I even bought fake glasses to make myself look more intellectual. I asked at least a dozen questions each class, and she asked them to me too. Our history classes became basically just me and her having a duel to see who could get the other to quit being annoying first. Everyone enjoyed the show. My classmates actually started talking to me. We had an individual presentation due, which I was ready for weeks in advance. It was the best performance of my life. I definitely deserved to have roses thrown at my feet. "Any questions, miss?" I asked Miss Michaels with a lifted eyebrow as she glared at me. She started picking at every word I had said, but I answered each question and had reasoning for everything I said. I didn't even notice when it happened, but suddenly we were standing mere inches apart. We suddenly realized we had an audience, so we fell apart and I sat back down as she straightened her skirt and asked the next person to do their presentation. Miss Michaels slipped a note in my locker. It said, "Meet me at this address at 3 o'clock on Saturday. You desperately need tutoring lessons." I tried to hide the note as quickly as possible, but a classmate saw the pink paper and snatched it out of my hands. Soon enough, I had a horde of guys from my grade asking how I got the teacher to drool for me. I told them I had no idea what they were talking about and left, but I couldn't wipe the stupid grin off my face the rest of the day. I was at Miss Michael's house that weekend. She led me straight to the dining room table when I got to her house, and she had loads of food and drinks for me. She spent the entire 2-hour tutoring session talking nonstop. "Do you know why every male student is suddenly failing my class?" she asked me. I shrugged at her and stuffed a cookie into my mouth, wiping the crumbs on my pants and putting my stuff back into my bag because it was getting kinda late. She saw me do this and grabbed my hand. She led me to the glass door that led to her backyard. "My yard is a mess and the pool desperately needs cleaning," she said nonchalantly, but she had clearly brought me to look at it for a reason. "Listen, I know about your family situation, Miles," she said, brushing the hair away from my eyes with her fingers. "Why don't you do a few chores around here for me and I'll pay you a decent amount of money?" She had this look on her face. It was a weird one. There was something in her eyes that told me she had some sort of a plan in mind, but she was right. My mom and I were barely making enough money to pay our rent, so the idea of some extra cash was exciting. I told Miss Michaels I'd be down to help her out, and she smiled at me and called me a good boy before leading me out the door. I started doing stuff around Miss Michaels' house. I took on the little projects that a stereotypical husband would do, like building a shed in the backyard, but I also cleaned her pool every week and mowed her lawn. One time, I was cleaning her pool while she was sunbathing. I kept hearing this buzzing sound thinking it was a bug, but then Miss Michaels gasped and looked up at the sky. There was a drone flying over her, and I could see the little camera. I tried knocking it out of the sky with multiple objects and chased after it when it started leaving. It landed in somebody's yard, and since they felt all right invading a woman's privacy like that, I didn't care if I invaded theirs, so I hopped over the fence into their backyard. I was surprised to find it was one of my stupid classmates. I didn't think I could take a 6'1" bodybuilder creep out, so I was relieved to see it was a lanky guy like me. I saw the remote in his hand and pounced on him. Miss Michaels arrived a few minutes later to pull me off the guy. She took me back to her place and told me to hop in the shower since I was muddy from rolling around on the floor with my classmate. She got me a clean set of clothes, and by the time I came downstairs, she had the table set all fancy and a big meal on it too. My stomach started growling. Miss Michaels told me to sit down and eat. She started running her fingers up and down my lower arm, and suddenly she reminded me a lot of girls my age and the way they flirt, giggling and batting their eyelashes. Before I knew it, she leaned in and kissed me. "You look just like your dad," she said and kissed me again. It took me a second to register, but then I heard a record scratch. My eyes shot open and suddenly I wasn't into it. I excused myself, saying I had to use the bathroom, then started freaking out. What the hell? What am I supposed to say to that? I thought. How does she even know my dad? I needed something to calm me down, so I started digging through her cabinets to see if she had something. My hand touched what felt like a plastic bag. I couldn't see it, but I pulled it out and saw it was a stack of photos. I recognized her in the first picture, and guess who was sitting next to her with his arm around her? It was my dad. They looked young, around my age. I started flipping through the pictures. There were some of them laughing, hanging out, and kissing. Crap, I thought. This woman dated my deadbeat dad, and now she wants me in his place. Things were a bit awkward after that. I tried to make up excuses to not go to her house, but Miss Michaels offered to pay me more, so I gave in. She kissed me goodbye every time I left, and sometimes would rub my shoulders or offer to give me a massage. I was still super into her though, and it was pretty cool to be the guy the hot teacher was into. I wouldn't say we were dating, but we did most things that two people who were dating do. I started getting attached, but not more than her. She could call and text me all the time and ask me to come over a lot. One day, I had to cancel on her because I got invited to a party, and for once, I wanted to go. I didn't like parties, but I also never got invited to them. Now that the teacher everyone wanted had the hots for me, every guy wanted to be my friend, and I got invited to parties. I showed up to the party just to find out what all the fuss was about, and soon realized absolutely nothing. It was horrible. I couldn't hear anyone talk, and I hated having people rubbing all over me. I heard there was a basement and snuck down there quickly. As I went down the stairs, the music got quieter, so I sighed in relief. But then I heard a familiar laugh. There was a wall that separated the basement into two sections. I took a peek around the wall, and guess who I saw? Miss Michaels. She was sitting on an old couch with a classmate of mine. She had her hand on his knee and was laughing at something he said. She then put her hand on his jaw and whispered loud enough that I could hear, "You look just like your dad," before kissing him. I don't even know what I felt in that moment. Anger, disgust, sadness? I leaned on the wall and looked at the couple kissing. I then cleared my throat to make myself known. And when I saw the look of shock on Miss Michaels' face, I said, "You're unbelievable," and stormed out. I ran out of the party without saying goodbye to anyone, but I wasn't alone, of course. Miss Michaels came running after me, apologizing and trying to get me to listen to her. "Miles, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you," she cried. She had thick mascara running down her cheeks. "How can I make it up to you? I'll do anything," she begged, which is when I got an idea. I knew for a fact that a woman like her had connections, and if she was a teacher, it was the type of connections I needed. I told her I would forgive her, but she had to get me into a college of my choice. She wiped her tears and nodded, saying she could definitely do that. She tried to kiss me, but I turned around and walked away, telling her to talk to me when I was accepted. It's not uncommon for a kid like me to get a fully paid scholarship to one of the best colleges in the country, so a celebration was in order, of course. I didn't have the money to throw a party, so I asked the school, and they let me arrange a movie night for my classmates and their families on the football field, using the school's equipment. Everyone was having a blast, and I was sitting next to Miss Michaels with my arm around her shoulder. I nudged her and told her to go hit play on my laptop for the movie to play. When she did, her face fell and her eyes started filling with tears. On the screen, everyone saw pictures of Miss Michaels with all her senior boyfriends. Every boy's parents looked at them angrily, but mostly at her. Next, only the moms looked upset because they saw pictures of Miss Michaels when she was younger, dating their husbands. See, she made the mistake of stashing pictures of her ex-boyfriends all over the house, and allowing me into said house gave me access to them. Because she wasn't very smart about where she hid them, I had just exposed her plan. She was dating the sons of every man she dated in college who lived here and had legal sons. Maybe it was some desperate way to get closure, but it was sick nonetheless. Of course, she was fired soon after. I can't think of a single family she didn't affect in some way. Although, her effect on my family was positive. "You're nothing like your father," said my mom proudly as we walked off that field, surrounded by arguing families. "You actually have a future," she said, smiling and ruffling my hair. She was right. Thanks to my psycho teacher, I had a bright future ahead of me. I was sitting in my bedroom staring out of the window. It was cold and miserable outside, exactly matching how I was feeling. I had told my dad that I had homework to do, but honestly, I just wanted to be alone. I had felt like that for over a year now, ever since the day my mom had disappeared. I tried to visualize her face. I did that at least 3 or 4 times a day. I was so scared that one day I would forget what she looked like. We had no idea why she had gone. One day she was there, the next day it was just me and Dad. I missed her so much. I missed her singing in the kitchen and the sound of her laughter when Dad told her one of his jokes. Since she had left, there had been no more happiness in our house. Dad and I were just existing. The loud knocking on the front door snapped me out of my reminiscing. I heard Dad open the door, and then the sound of his footsteps were coming up the stairs. He opened my bedroom door, and I looked up. "Jason, you'd better come downstairs," he said. "The police are here, and they have something important to tell us." My stomach lurched at his words. My head spun with the thoughts of all the reasons the police might be there. I followed Dad downstairs and into the lounge. There were 2 policemen sitting on the couch. As Dad and I sat down, one of them spoke. "We have some good news," they said to Dad. "We have found your wife, and she's alive and safe." But before I go on, make sure you like and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any more crazy stories. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mom had been found. Dad and I put on our coats and got into Dad's car. We followed the police back to the station. When we arrived, they took us through to a room at the back. When they opened the door, I could see my mom sitting on a chair behind a table. I ran and put my arms around her, hugging her as tightly as I could. Mom, I can't believe it's you. I'm so happy to see you. I've missed you so much," I cried. But Mom looked at me in confusion. "Who are you two?" she asked. The policeman then explained to us that Mom seemed to be suffering from amnesia. They had found her wandering along the side of the road. She wasn't wearing a coat and looked confused, so they had brought her along to the station. One of the sergeants there had recognized her from the missing report we had filed. "It might take a while, but we're confident that her memory will return," he said. Just be patient with her. The three of us drove home in silence. It was so bittersweet. On the one hand, I was so happy to have my mom back. But on the other, I was sad that she didn't know who I was. I vowed then that I would do my best to help her regain her memory. It was the school holidays, so I spent every minute I could with my mom. I showed her old photographs of us together and we watched home videos we had made. Slowly, Mom began to remember some of our times together. One day, we were sitting in the garden together and she turned to me and said, "Why don't we go to the beach? You always loved going to the beach when you were little. You used to make sandcastles and splash about in the water." Mom eventually regained all of her memories. That is, except for the year she had been away from home. It didn't matter how many doctors she saw or how many times we talked about it. She still had no recollection of anything she had seen or done in that year. But it didn't matter. We accepted the fact that we may never know where she had been or what she had done. The important thing was, we had her back. The school holidays came to an end far too quickly. It was time for me to go back to school. I wasn't looking forward to that. I hated school. Well, actually, that wasn't true. It was the principal that I hated. I had no idea what I had ever done to him, but for some reason, he was out to ruin my life. The first day of school started off pretty normally. I went to my classes and managed not to get into any trouble with the teachers. The bell rang for lunch and I followed my classmate to the dining hall. That was when I saw him, Mr. Yates, the school principal. I tried to avoid catching his eye, but no such luck. I heard his voice bellowing at me. "Jason, what do you think you're doing? Get to the back of the queue." I put my head down and tried to ignore him. "Right, that's it," he shouted. "You have an hour's detention this afternoon at my office." "Oh, please no, sir," I said. "I'll miss the tryouts for the football team." "Too bad, Jason. Be at my office straight after the last bell." I knew it was no good arguing with him. This happened to me all the time. I could never make it onto any of the school sports teams because I always missed either the selection process or the practice matches. My detention finally ended and I walked out of the school gates. Mom was waiting there for me. We began to walk home. As we were nearing the area where the teachers parked their cars, we saw Mr. Yates walking across the car park. Mom turned to me and said, "I know him." "Of course you do, Mom," I replied. "He's my school principal." "No," she said. "I mean, I know him from before." She then told me that she had gone to university with Mr. Yates, but he had dropped out before he had finished his degree. When we got home, I went up to my bedroom. I couldn't stop thinking about what Mom had told me. If it's true, if Mr. Yates doesn't have a degree, then how has he gotten the job as the school principal? I thought to myself. I decided I was going to do some investigating into Mr. Yates. I started searching the internet, and it wasn't long before I found what I was looking for. There was a photo of Mr. Yates graduating from the same university that my mom had. He was holding a certificate for a degree in teaching. I blew the picture up as big as I could. That's when I noticed the discrepancies. It had so obviously been photoshopped. Mr. Yates had taken a photo of another student and put his own face and name on it. I smiled to myself. I knew that I would be able to use this information to my advantage. I began to form a plan in my head. The following day, I went out of my way to get in trouble with Mr. Yates. It didn't take much doing. He gave me a detention and told me to be at his office straight after school. As I walked toward his office, I felt excitement instead of the usual trepidation. I knocked on the door, and when he answered, I went inside. "Right, Jason, sit down and write out 100 lines, he said. "No," I shouted. He looked at me in shock. "How dare you, boy," he yelled. "You will do as I say." That's when I told him all that I had discovered about him. "You're a fake and a fraud, and if you don't start being nice to me, I'm gonna tell everyone what you've done." The color drained from his face. "Get out of here, now," he screamed. I left his office with a beam on my face. I knew that my life at school was going to be a whole lot better. Things did change. Mr. Yates stopped giving me detention after that. He even told the other teachers to start giving me an A in all of my exams. It wasn't long before I was top in my class in every subject. Mr. Yates made me the school captain, and I got picked to play on the school football team. I didn't have anything to worry about as far as Mr. Yates was concerned, and my life at home was getting even better. Mom had started to get a few vague memories of the year she had been away. It was only small things at first. She would say things like she remembered sitting at a table eating her lunch, or she would describe the room she had slept in. I felt sure that it wouldn't be much longer before she was able to tell us everything. It was nearly the end of term and time for my parents to meet with my teachers. Dad had to work late, so it was just me and Mom going. Usually, I hated these meetings because my grades were bad, but this year, I wasn't bothered at all. I knew that I would get a glowing report from every teacher. We met with all of my teachers, and then it was time for us to meet with Mr. Yates. We went into his office. As we sat down, Mom said, "Wait, I know you." "Yes," said Mr. Yates, "we went to university together." "No, it's not from then," Mom went on. "I remember being in your house." I looked at Mom in confusement. "It was last year," she said. "You kept me in your basement." "What are you talking about, Mom?" I asked her. "Are you saying Mr. Yates kidnapped you?" Mom looked at me and nodded, looking shocked herself. I couldn't believe it. My principal had kidnapped my mom? This new information was almost too hard to believe. I turned to Mr. Yates. "Why would you do that?" "I was in love with you," he said to Mom. Then he looked towards me. "Your mom and I dated for a while in university, but then she dumped me and married your dad." I looked at him in astonishment. "You broke my heart when you married Jason's dad." "But we only went out a couple of times," Mom said. "It wasn't serious." "It was for me," he said. "I never forgot my love for you." Mr. Yates then told us how it was during his first week as principal at our school that he had noticed my mom. He had recognized her straight away as the girl who he had dated at university. He said that when he saw her again, all the old feelings came flooding back. "I just had to get you back one way or another," he said. "That's why I decided to kidnap you. I thought that once you were living at my house, then you would fall in love with me and leave Jason's father. But I came home from work one day and found the front door wide open. You had broken out of the basement and managed to escape from the house. We're going to tell the police what you've done," I told him. "You'll be going to jail for a very long time." "Oh, I don't think so." With that, he pressed a button on the side of his desk. We heard a grating sound and iron shutters came sliding down all four sides of us. We were trapped like animals in an enclosure. "My dad will save us," I cried. "Once he realizes we're not home, he'll come looking for us." "Then I'll kidnap your dad too." "No, no." Suddenly we heard a knocking at the door. "Shh, be quiet or you will both regret it," said Mr. Yates. He went and opened the door. His secretary was standing outside. "Is everything all right, Mr. Yates?" she asked. "Yes, why?" "It's just that we heard your conversation on the school intercom." That's when Mr. Yates realized everything he had said had been broadcast to the whole school. Every teacher, parent, and child now knew what he had done. That's when I saw my opportunity. I picked up the microphone on his desk and spoke into it. "Help! Please help us! We're trapped in the principal's office. He's a fraud. He faked his own degree certificate and kidnapped my mom. Now he's holding us hostage here." Mr. Yates sank back into his chair with a look of despair. He knew that it was all over. A few seconds later, the police burst into the room, closely followed by my dad. He came over and put his arms around me and Mom. "The school secretary phoned me as soon as she heard your conversation on the intercom. I got here as soon as I could. There's no way I'm going to lose either of you again," he said. The police handcuffed Mr. Yates and told him he was under arrest for faking his degree and kidnapping my mom. They took him outside and put him into their police car. As the car pulled out of the school driveway, Mr. Yates turned and looked out of the back window. I thought he was looking at the school, but actually, I think he was just getting one final look at my mom. I didn't care. Let him look. I knew that we wouldn't be seeing his face around here for a very long time.
Hi, my name is Alana, and honestly, I'm still so excited about this. I want the whole world to know. My whole life changed when I finally got to kiss my crush at a party. Sounds like something that happens every Friday night, right? But what if I tell you that it took a whole year for me to get to that point, and everyone recorded us while we did it? Also, it might have finally broken a family curse I'm sure existed, even though no one believes me. Yeah, it's a bit more complex than you originally might have thought, right? Well, let's tell you a bit about me. I come from this really dysfunctional family, and I mean messed up for real. Mom and Dad are divorced, and so are my uncles and grandparents. Basically, anyone who got married in my family wanted out, like super fast. You might even call it a bit of a family curse. I don't know. But before we move on, like this video, hit that subscribe button and activate the notification bell. This will let you live 20 amazing years longer. Trust me, it works. I'm the youngest of 3 siblings. My brothers, Wendell and Jules, are both a mess. Jules got engaged to his girlfriend when they were still in high school. They got married like a week after graduating. Want to know how long that lasted? 2 months. Yeah, that's right. They didn't even make it to half a year. And my brother Wendell, yeah, he got himself into a shotgun wedding because he got the sheriff's daughter pregnant. So he married her even though they had only been dating for like 5 or 6 months. They're still married, but believe me when I say, not happily. At least my niece is super cute, and I get to babysit her often. She's almost 2 years old now, and the most adorable little girl ever. I hate it when my brother and sister-in-law argue in front of her. I don't think they'll stay married much longer, but my brother is too afraid of his dad-in-law to actually file for a divorce. So, yeah, growing up, I had several Christmas parties and birthdays to celebrate in order to avoid my divorced relatives from ever meeting. Getting both my parents to go to a PDA was almost impossible. These issues really affected the way I saw relationships and love, you know? In my mind, no matter how much you like someone, it always ended up going wrong. And Mom and Dad didn't just break it off. They hated each other's guts, but kept contacting each other all the time. Mom would tell him she wanted to go back to him, and then he'd go to her place and they'd be super lovey-dovey for a few days, before he accused her of cheating or she got annoyed by his old habits or something. Then they'd split up again and it all went to hell. They were the most divorced couple I'd ever met. And the worst part was that my brothers and I always got dragged into this mess, every single time. Jules and Wendell are quite a bit older than me, and because of that, I was usually the only one living at home with my mom when these temporary reconciliations happened. I bet you can imagine why I'm the youngest by far. Yeah. Mom and Dad thought a third baby, after years and years of a rocky marriage, would fix everything. It only made things worse. A baby is a lot of work, and it puts a lot of stress on a couple. It can be a blissful arrival, sure, but it can also break what was already bent. And my parents, well, they got drunk. They might have told me I was the reason they got divorced. They never remember this the next morning, and I know it's not true, but it still hurts a lot. I have no idea how to deal with it, and I have to deal with that. My parents, my aunts and uncles, my brothers, and even my grandparents can be so stupid when it comes to relationships that I kind of figured out everyone was that way. That was why when I began having feelings for this cute guy at my school, Tommy, I immediately freaked out. In my head, this wasn't going to work out well at all. He was the perfect guy, you know? Good student, funny, super sweet, and oh my god, so damn hot. He was everything I wanted in a guy, and that scared me to bits. Because I had seen the pattern repeat itself over and over and over again, I'd fall in love, we'd date, everything would be fine. We'd fight, break up, reunite, break up, get married, go on a separation period, get back together, divorce, see each other in motel rooms pretending it was nothing serious. Yeah, I know. It's a messed up way of thinking, but it's what my family taught me happens when you fall in love. Oh, and don't even get me started on how afraid I am any potential boyfriend will cheat on me. Because my brother Wendell, the one that's still married, yeah, he has 2 lovers, and everyone in the family knows about it, except for his wife. That is, or perhaps she knows. Honestly, I don't even want to find out. So when I began fancying this super cute guy, I thought that I was going crazy. I had promised myself I'd never have a boyfriend, that it was too much of a mess anyways. But whenever I saw Tommy, I'd get all flustered and my heart would begin beating faster. I felt butterflies in my stomach, the whole thing. I was head over heels in love with the guy, and everyone noticed. Now the thing is, every single year, the super rich girl in our school threw an insane party for her birthday. Everyone was invited, and there was so much fancy food, drinks, and party favors. It was the event of the year, no doubt about it. We were all so excited about it, and everyone was planning what we'd wear to it. It was so much fun every single time, and crazy things tended to happen. Now, I'm not really a big party girl, but my friends really wanted me to go, and Tommy was going to be there. This might be your chance to finally kiss him, Samantha, my best friend, told me, trying to convince me to go. Yeah, you totally need to go. I mean, he's so into you. Why wouldn't you just kiss him already? Carla, another of my friends, asked like for the 10th time. I rolled my eyes and sighed. Yeah, I knew he was into me, and everyone else seemed to know it too, but I was too afraid. I had explained this to my friends 100 times before, but they didn't believe me when I said that my family was cursed when it came to love. But I knew that we had to be. It was the only explanation. Well, I decided to go to the party and see if maybe kissing him finally felt right. If I could get over my fears. My friends kept pushing me to do it, and they all laughed at the idea of the curse. Your family is just messed up, but you turned out normal, Sam told me, and I rolled my eyes. Sure, every single member of my family is just messed up? I asked, and she shrugged. No one had a good answer for that question, you know? Anyways, my friends and I were super excited about the party of the year. We tried on so many different dresses, and I settled for a strapless green one that made my eyes pop. I felt so beautiful. I was usually kind of nerdy, using oversized clothes, but that night felt like it could be the beginning of something super special. My friends applied makeup on me and combed my hair into a long braid. Honestly, I felt super hot, and when we walked into the party, guys were actually staring at me. They complimented the way I looked in ways that maybe I shouldn't say here. There were a few bad words sprinkled around in what they claimed they would like to do to me in that dress. I didn't care about any of them, though. My mind was set on Tommy, and if perhaps I could finally get over my fears of messing up my first relationship ever, maybe I'd be able to kiss him. I was so nervous, believe me. I spotted Tommy chatting with a group of his friends, and he looked so dreamy that I was completely drooling over him. God, he was so perfect. My friend Sam laughed when he saw the expression on my face and gave me a little look. "When are you going to make a move and kiss him already?" she asked me. But I didn't feel ready just yet. When the time is right, I'll know it and I'll kiss him, okay? But I don't feel we're there just yet. "But look at him, he can't take his eyes off you," Sam retorted. And I looked over at Tommy. It was true. He was staring at me and smiling, and this made me blush even harder. Anyways, I decided to go dance for a while and take my head off that issue. I was rocking to this amazing song when a girl suddenly tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around and it was one of Tommy's best friends. "Hey, Alana, Tommy wants to see you downstairs," she explained. I was super confused and I didn't know what to expect, but I followed behind her. I got there, following his friend, and I was super surprised to see all my best friends and his close friends too. Tommy was standing in the middle of them, and everyone had their cameras out. I was so embarrassed and confused, believe me. What's going on?" I asked timidly, and Tommy walked up to me, taking my hands in his. He was so handsome and perfect. "Alana, I want you to kiss me," he explained, and I looked away, even more embarrassed than before. I don't want to be the one to make the first move because I know how much this relationship thing worries you, so you have to be the one that kisses me first. I looked up into his eyes and bit my lower lip, unsure what to say. Perhaps I should leave, but I really did want to stay by his side. "Are you sure? I mean, my family's a mess. I'm not even kidding you. All of them are divorced, crazy, and so annoying," I mumbled, and he just laughed and shrugged. "I like you, and if you come with a little bit of baggage, I'm okay with that as well," he replied. That was when I finally kissed him. People around us cheered and clapped, and I know they were all recording our first kiss. It had been a year in the making, and everyone was just waiting for it to finally happen. It was the best 10 seconds of my life, even if everyone was staring at us. The next day at school, Tommy walked up to me, and much to my surprise, he told me he wanted to speak to me about something important. "Look, I really like you. I know you have your concerns, but I'm in this for the long run, if you want me. So, will you be my girlfriend?" he asked. I was so shocked and delighted and finally decided to let go of my fears. I said yes. We kissed again and he hugged me so tightly. I knew he really did love me. Now, believe it or not, that was 10 years ago. Tommy and I got married, have a kid together, and are still getting along great. No divorce or breakups in our future. I think I broke my family curse. Or perhaps it never existed to begin with, and my family is just really complicated. Thanks for watching. So what do you think? Do curses really exist? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and check out our other videos on the channel.